Yeah, yeah. Ball so hard, you better believe me, it's scary. It's basketball at the bar with Calvin and Barry. So put a tip in the jar, cause these dudes can really fill it up. Whether it's buckets you need or just a beer in a cup. We're here for fresh conversations and some delicious libations. Subscribe to the channel and turn on the notifications. My boys got you covered like you being guarded by Peyton. From the glove to the claw and everyone else in between. Calvin and Barry got everything that you need. So sit back, relax, because we're starting the show. It's basketball at the bar. Grab your drinks and let's go. Yeah. Grab a drink and let's go. Subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification. Calvin and Barry. Subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification. Let's get it.
What's up, Barflies? Welcome to Basketball at the Bar. Join us live every weekday for the best NBA podcast here on YouTube, where the takes are hot and the drinks are cold. There's no dress code, and you can take us wherever you go. So pull up a stool, drop a like, and don't forget to subscribe. This is Basketball at the Bar. Grab your drinks and let's go. All right, Calvin, we made it. It's Thursday, stream number 4. We're excited. And no games today, but we still have a ton to talk about. We had 2 teams go fishing last night. They are officially eliminated, and there's going to be 2 more teams going fishing tomorrow. So first off, I want to just kind of give a couple updates as far as news going on in the NBA. The Cavaliers' Jared Allen is questionable for the game tomorrow. That is huge for the Cavs. If they're going to win that game, I really think they're going to need him. We don't know what's going on with John Collins. He missed the last game as well. Both of those teams need those guys. They really do. Also, good news about Curry. He is very optimistic. He will be available to play in Game 1 for the Golden State Warriors on Saturday, which is huge. And I know many Warriors fans have got to feel a lot of relief, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. He's going to be on a minutes restriction is what they said, but we'll have to see how it goes. If he's feeling good and the game is close, I have a feeling that he'll keep playing.
I mean, if he's only playing 20 minutes, he can still have a huge impact on the team.
Definitely.
As Gotham says, only my lady gets the tip. Sorry.
It's my tip.
Oh, my tip. That tip.
Key difference there.
Same thing. All right, Calvin. So let's talk about Friday's games. First off, we have the Eastern Conference matchup, Hawks at Cleveland Cavaliers. Let me hear your thoughts on this game. I know we just talked about injuries, but I just want to hear your overall thoughts on this game.
This game is going to be very interesting because these 2 teams go about their business in very different ways. The Hawks have the number 1 offensive rating in the NBA at 122. The Cavs have the number 1 defensive rating in the NBA at, 101.5. So very, very different styles here. Atlanta loves to get up and down, run, shoot a lot of threes. They finished the season a little over 37% from 3. It was tied for second in the NBA. Cleveland's more of a slow it down, grind it out, play from the inside out with their 3 big men, Markkanen, Mobley, and Jared Allen, who they hope to get back for this game. To me, it's all going to come down to playing inside. I look to Evan Mobley here in particular for Cleveland. Yes, Jared Allen is going to have to get healthy and come back, and he's going to have a very tough assignment against Clint Capella. But I think that leaves Evan Mobley open for an opportunity to have a big game because I'm not really sure who the Hawks are going to throw on him. Mm-hmm. DeAndre Hunter makes the most sense to me, but he's not really that used to guarding people in the post. Mobley is a pretty polished post player already for a rookie and can really score in a variety of ways down there. So that's going to be a tough matchup. And then do the Hawks come out and get the support from their other three-point shooters like we saw against Charlotte? Or is Trae Young going to have to do most of the heavy lifting himself? If Bogdanovich and Herter and these guys, Gallinari, they come out and they start nailing threes early on in this game, it's going to change things very, very much so for the Hawks. But I don't think they're going to have nearly as many open looks from 3 in this game as they did against the Charlotte Hornets.
Yeah, I think that, Cleveland definitely needs to be physical in this game. They need to push the Hawks off their spots. And three-point shooting is going to be absolutely key for the Hawks if they want to win this game. as well as offensive rebounding. When you shoot a ton of threes, there are a lot of rebounds to be had. And, Cleveland, I think, matches up pretty good against a guy like Clint Capella, who did so much damage in the last game. I think he had like 17 rebounds in that last game.
Yeah.
They have 3 7-footers they can throw out there in Cleveland. I do think Jared Allen will be available to play. He'll probably be on a minutes restriction, so he probably won't be there for the entire game. But they have 3 guys. They have Markkanen, they have Allen, and they have Mobley that can go out there. They need to get rebounds. They need to prevent Atlanta from getting offensive rebounds, and they need to be physical with their shooters. I think that is going to be the key for Cleveland to stay in this game.
Definitely. They're going, like you said, being physical, running them off the three-point line, chasing screens, things like that. This is stuff that Cleveland has done all year long. I expect Darius Garland and Trae Young both to almost cancel each other out. I think they're both going to play really well. Both their teams need them to score a bunch of points in this game in order to win. But, yeah, to me, it's the height advantage, the size advantage, and how Cleveland can play inside out. And the fact that they're probably going to look to slow this game down, that's going to really turn the tide for me. I think Cleveland ends up winning.
Yeah, I agree. I think Cleveland will end up winning this game as well. I think that they, need a lot out of Rondo. As I mentioned in the last podcast, they need Rondo to do his thing. Dude has 2 championship rings. He's been in the league for a long time. He knows what he's doing. They need Rondo to do his thing. He needs to get physical with Trae Young. He needs to do the little things. He needs to empower his team, and he needs to give confidence to his teammates. I think they're going to need a much better shooting night out of Karis LeVert than they did out of the past game. If they're going to stay in this game, I think the Hawks are ranked the 6th highest powered offense in the league, or highest scoring. And as you mentioned, Cleveland does the complete opposite. So to deal with a high offense like that, high-powered offense, you need to be physical, and you need to make some shots as well. And I think Karis LeVert is going to be huge in that. And like I said, if you can put Rondo on Trae Young, maybe that'll allow Darius Garland to do a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. Or Isaac Okoro, who starts for Cleveland. I expect him to get the early matchup on Trae Young. That gives Darius Garland a little bit of a breather in terms of not having to work as hard defensively. Trae isn't really going to have that luxury. I don't know who else he would guard on this team. Maybe you put him on Okoro as well, because he's not much of an offensive option for this Cleveland team. But then the question becomes, does Karis LeVert get the start over Isaac Okoro anyway? So matchups, of course, in playoff games, playoff series are a big deal. And don't forget, we haven't even mentioned John Collins' name yet. Yep. I think if he doesn't play, which it looks like he's probably not going to at this point, that's going to be a big loss for Atlanta in this game.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the injury report right now. As of right now, these could change by tomorrow, but as of right now, Chaundi Brown Jr. is ruled out, John Collins is out, Lou Williams is out, and actually Bogdan Bogdanovic is day-to-day. I don't know what he's dealing with at this point.
A lot of guys right now are listed as day-to-day. Bogdan will play. I feel pretty confident.
If he doesn't play, Atlanta's in huge trouble, but I think he will play. And then they also have Jared Allen listed as out, which, I think all of these could potentially change by then. I'm not sure if Lou Williams will be available. ESPN's listing it as a complete toss-up, 49.9% to 50.1%. I'm looking at the over-under on this game, Calvin, 223.5. You like the over or you like the under? Because this is a tough one to choose.
It's a very tough game to call. Generally speaking, I go for the overs in all NBA games at this day and age. That's just the way the league goes, especially when you've got one team that is one of the top offensive teams in the league and is capable of just lighting it up from three, as we saw just yesterday. So I would probably take the over, but I don't feel confident betting either way in this game.
Yeah, Atlanta's coming into this game pretty hot, 3 out of 5. Both teams obviously won their last games. They won their last game. Cleveland did not win their last game. In the last 5 games, Cleveland is only 1-4, but they were able to beat Milwaukee. They have losses, 2 losses against Brooklyn, a humiliating loss against Orlando, and a loss to Philadelphia as well. So Cleveland is reeling a little bit, but, they're favored by 2 in this game. I think Cleveland's going to be able to pull it out.
Yeah. You never know. These one-game situations are always really difficult to call, especially when you've got 2 teams that are so opposite from each other.
Yeah. What's up, Key Kings? What's up, Gothan? Good to see you guys here. The format's a little bit different on this show. We have so much stuff to talk about. We love to interact with you guys, so we will be doing that as well. But we have so much to go over. We're going to basically knock out all these games, and then we finish the show with Q&A with you guys. So if you have any specific topics you want us to talk about, any questions, just get ready for the end because we would love to just hang out with you guys and, discuss fun basketball things. All right, next up, Calvin, is the second game on Friday, and that is New Orleans visiting LA to take on the Clippers. This is a big game. I know you and I chose different teams on this game, and I think we have a little friendly wager for a shot of Jameson.
We do.
Which will be exciting because we will be probably watching this game live on Friday during the stream, so that'll be a lot of fun. But let me hear your thoughts on this game.
This game is tough to call as well. New Orleans, obviously with the addition of C.J. McCollum at the trade deadline, that really changed things for them. They have been a much, much better team ever since then. And the Clippers have just not been healthy at all this season. I mean, Paul George only played 30 games. Norman Powell, a guy they traded for at the deadline, who was in the middle of a career year, also hurt for most of the second half of the season. He only played 4 games down the stretch of the regular season with the Clippers. Now Luke Kennard is another guy that just missed their last play-in game. He's been shooting incredibly well, 45% from 3 this season, led the NBA in three-point field goal shooting. They really need him to come back in this game because the Clippers have been a team that's done it by committee all year long. They're one of only a few teams in the league to have 9 guys averaging double figures for them this season. Norman Powell is an asterisk there because he did most of that work with Portland. But still, they've been a team that does it by committee all year long. And then New Orleans, I think the biggest advantage they have in this game is rebounding. The Clippers are not a great rebounding team. They're second to last in the NBA in opponents' rebounds per game. New Orleans is a very good rebounding team. Valanciunas keeps guys off the offensive boards. The Clippers don't have many guys in the paint when shots go up anyway because they spread the floor around the three-point line. So that's the one area I think I look at in this game where I expect CJ to have a good game. Again, I expect Paul George to have a good game. But if Valanciunas can really dominate inside, that's a huge advantage for New Orleans.
Yeah, and in that last game, they actually started Valanciunas and Jackson Hayes next to each other, which gives them, they're kind of doing what Cleveland's doing, right? It's just putting a bunch of big guys. The trend around the NBA over the last 15 years is to play small, have a bunch of guys that can move, shoot, defend, and just kind of space the floor and just try and run guys out of the gym. It's kind of cool seeing some of these teams take a different approach and try and counteract that. New Orleans is, they're a good team. They're dealing with some injuries as well. I'm looking here at the injury reports. It's interesting. They don't have Zion or Kawhi Leonard listed on this injury report. So both of those guys are still huge question marks. As you mentioned, Luke Kennard is day-to-day. I think the Clippers are going to need him in this game.
Definitely.
But, the Clippers were pretty hot going into that play-in game against Minnesota. They were 4-0 in their last 4 games. They lost that game by 5. I was very disappointed by their effort in that game. I thought that they should have won that game. But they have another chance to play another game at home and hopefully defeat this New Orleans team. But I don't think it's going to be as easy as they think it will be. This New Orleans team has been playing great since the trade deadline. You mentioned C.J. McCollum has been a complete game changer for them. And I'm going to stick with what I said yesterday. I think whoever scores more in this game between C.J. and Paul George, their team's going to win.
Yeah, I think that's a good call here. Like I said yesterday, I think that the Clippers need Paul George to score more in this game than the Pelicans need CJ to. I think it's going to come down to a couple of things. Rebounding, like I mentioned already, bench play. Both of these teams don't have the deepest benches, especially New Orleans. So whichever bench can come in, especially if Luke Kennard is going to come back and play in this game, that gives a bit of an advantage to the Clippers for sure. And I still think LA is yes, they did not play as well as they should have maybe in that Minnesota game. They didn't take advantage of Karl Anthony Towns fouling out pretty early on in the fourth quarter. So I expect them to come back home. They have a bad taste in their mouth, right? Because Patrick Beverley just whipped him and called him out on national TV and got fined $30,000 for doing it and all that stuff. So they're going to come into this game very, very motivated. I think Paul George has a really, really solid game for the Clippers, and I think they bounce back and they win this one.
Okay, you heard it here first, guys. That's going to be an exciting game. I'm really excited for that. I like the Cleveland-Atlanta game, but I think New Orleans versus LA is going to be a huge game. And I think it's our first game we've seen on TNT of the play-in, so that should be pretty exciting. I think they're gearing up. They know it's going to be a popular game. And, Paul George, I'm a big Paul George fan. He's done a lot in the NBA, hasn't won a title yet. He's bounced around to a couple different teams now. He needs to put this team on his back. He went to L.A. to play with Kawhi Leonard. Unfortunately, Leonard's been injured all season, hasn't been available. There's some murmurs that he could potentially return. I have no idea what the validity is to those. But if they're going to win this one game and make the playoffs, they need an absolute huge game out of Paul George.
They sure do. And Paul George has evolved as a player over the past couple of years. He's always been a phenomenal scorer, great one-on-one player, a ridiculously good outside shooter. But he just had a career-high 12 assists against your Sacramento Kings down towards the stretch, and he's really been a phenomenal playmaker for them all year long. It really helps, of course, when you've got so many guys spread out around the three-point line that can knock shots down. But I've loved his decision-making as the guy who's primarily handling the ball along with Reggie Jackson. And, I'm putting my money on Paul George for this one game.
Over-under on this game, 215.5.
I take the over on this one. That's pretty low. To think that the over-under for – I realize Atlanta is a very high-scoring team, but to think the over-under for that game is higher than this game, I would definitely put money on the over for this one.
Okay, good to know. Anything else you want to mention about these last two playing games before we get to Saturday's exciting first day of the playoffs?
It's going to be an exciting day. This is exactly what the NBA wants, right? They want these playing games to be premier matchup, as premier of a matchup as you can make them. I think we got the best last day results possible for these playing games. No San Antonio and no Charlotte involved, basically, is what I'm saying. So it should be an exciting day, and we're even more excited to get the real thing underway on Saturday.
And the Pelicans could potentially make the playoffs 10 games under 500.
Yeah.
Which is absolutely wild.
Started 1-12, right?
Yeah.
I think it was.
Yeah, 1-12. And could make the playoffs. Like I said, I'm rooting for them. I really am. I really like what they do. And, we didn't even mention Brandon Ingram, right?
Yep.
He's probably going to get guarded by Robert Covington in this game. But whoever plays better offensively, I think, is going to win this game. And I actually do think it's going to slow down in the fourth quarter. It's probably going to, get a little mucky, a little physical. That's probably why the over-under is so low on this game. But another exciting day of basketball.
Sure is.
All right, let's move on here to Saturday, April 16th, the first official day of the NBA playoffs. I don't know about you, Calvin, but I'm working on Saturday, so unfortunately, I'm going to try and watch as many of these games as I can, but I'm probably going to have to rewatch them later in the evening.
Well, I am working as well, unfortunately, so I will be in the same boat.
And we talked about doing a live stream on Saturday. I know we've only committed to Monday through Friday at this point, but we're considering doing a live stream on Saturday since the very first day of the playoffs. Let us know in the chat or down below in the comments if you would like us to do a live stream on Saturday, because we care about you. We listen to you, the fans. All right, first game. This is an early game. This is 7 a.m. our time, Calvin. This reminds me of football a little bit. Utah is visiting Dallas for the first game of the playoffs. How does this game shake down?
This game shakes down to how healthy is Luka Doncic. That's what this whole series is going to be based on for me. Again, this is another series where these two teams are not maybe polar opposites, but go about their business very differently. Utah loves to shoot the three. Mm-hmm. They're one of only 2 teams in the NBA to average over 40 3-point attempts per game. I think that's the second straight year that they've actually done that. And they fill it up, right? They also are a great rebounding team, obviously, with Rudy Gobert. They protect the rim really well. And for Dallas, they play at the slowest pace in the NBA. Everything they do revolves around Luka and playing good team defense. They've got one of the only 5 players in the NBA to play all 82 games this season. That's Dwight Powell. So they've got an NBA Iron Man on their team, which is pretty impressive given he just missed an entire season and a half, I think it was, with a torn Achilles.
He's well rested.
He is well rested. But yeah, I mean, this series absolutely has to come down to how healthy is Luka, because if he can't be at his best, I don't think Dallas has much of a chance against any team in the West.
Oh, yeah. They only go as far as he takes them. He's still listed as out in this game. Like I said earlier, all these could change. It just gives you a little insight to where they're at right now. Maxi Kleber is also listed as out. He's been very big for them. Frank Ntilikina is day-to-day. Sterling Brown is day-to-day. And then Donovan Mitchell is day-to-day for the Utah Jazz. This is going to be an exciting matchup. It's really hard for me to pick a team here because I see so much good out of both teams, and then I also see the faults too, right? Like Utah for me last year was an incredible team. I thought that they were going to go much further. They've underperformed this season. Dallas has done the same. They end up trading Porzingis for Spencer Dinwiddie. He's been playing great. I'm still not sold on what his exact role is on this team because Luka Doncic handles the ball so much, and we saw Spencer Dinwiddie have some of his best basketball seasons handling the ball in Brooklyn. So it's a tough game for me, but I agree with you. It comes down to health, right? Is Luka Doncic going to be himself? Is he going to put up another 30-point triple-double in this game? Because that's what we've known for him in the playoffs over the last few seasons. How's Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert's chemistry going to work out? We've seen them play incredible together, and then we've also heard about all these issues that they've had off the court, whether it's the COVID thing or other stuff. He's been mentioned in trade rumors. I'm talking about Rudy Gobert. So this is going to be a very interesting series. I don't think who wins this first game is automatically going to win the series, but it definitely sets a tone. And if Dallas can win this game at home and Luka's looking like himself, I think it definitely advantaged Dallas.
Yeah, I would give a slight advantage to Dallas. You can look at Utah one of 2 ways. A lot of people have talked about what player in these NBA playoffs has the most to prove or the most on the line. Utah is one of the teams with the most to prove for me. And they're coming off of a year where they were the number 1 seed in the West. They didn't do anything. They've had some really, really heartbreaking moments in the playoffs the past couple of years. That series against Denver in the bubble was one of the most entertaining series to watch in recent memory. But they came up short time and time again, right? So you can either look at them and say, well, that just means that they've gone through their trials and tribulations and they're ready to finally break through. Or you can look at what they did this season. As you mentioned, they didn't perform as well as they have the past couple of years. So are they really ready to go through another difficult series again? So, yeah, if Luka is healthy, I think Dallas wins this series by a close margin. I could easily see it going 6 or 7 games. But I just don't trust Utah enough right now.
Yeah, I think, both of these teams didn't imagine that they would be fighting for their lives here in the first round. I thought that both of these teams were probably going to end up in the top 4 maybe as far as standings go. But now only one's moving on, right? One of them is going to be eliminated, and I think it will be, a disappointment for that team. So if Utah's out early, what do they need to do this offseason? If the Mavericks get bounced early, what do they need to do this offseason to come back and be competitive and be what they want to be next year?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
You have any ideas on those?
on what the Mavericks will be next year?
What the Mavericks or the Jazz need to do to improve if they lose in the first round this year.
Well, that's really tough. I mean, because Dallas had, in my opinion, they overachieved a little bit this year. I felt like they would probably be somewhere in the 6 to 7 range. They end up with a home court advantage for the first round. Mm-hmm. They're a much improved defensive team. I did not expect that. You know, after they trade away Porzingis, you kind of have the question of, is this team just going to fold and collapse? They didn't. They continued on the same trajectory. Spencer Dinwiddie's been a great addition for them, and I think he plays well next to Luka, actually, with his catch and shoot ability. He shot just under 50% from the field and 40% from three this year. When you have a guy like Luka on your team who draws a lot of attention, obviously, and is a great distributor, catch and shoot guys are really, really important to have, and they've got a few of them on this team.
Yep, and Jason Kidd helps a lot as
absolutely,
well. Right?
Absolutely. So I think that Utah probably is at a bigger crossroads this offseason than Dallas is, just because of the issues you mentioned with Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell. There's a big, big cloud hanging over that organization right now. Quinn Snyder is now on the hot seat. Mm-hmm. He's I think, one of the better coaches in the NBA. So, but it's that one of those situations again where if you get to the door and you're knocking but you just can't seem to get through time and time again, eventually something has to change. And Utah tried to make some changes at the deadline this year. They got rid of Joe Ingles.
Yep.
They got rid of Rodney Hood last year, or was that 2 years ago, something like that.
Yep.
So I think they have a lot of question marks to answer this offseason, especially if they are bounced out here in the first round again.
Yeah, they brought in a guy like Mike Conley, who's been a great player in the league, was the highest paid player in the NBA at one point. I think last year they were like ranked number 1 in defense and number 1 in three-point shooting, two things that, you know, many teams strive to be, right? But they did underperform in the playoffs. I think it's more than one thing, right? Like, if they lose this series, first off, you need to figure out what's going on with Mitchell and Gobert and whether those guys are willing to squash it, because they're two great players. And we've seen a lot of teams have success with the center shooting guard combo that plays really well together. These guys have not had that same success in the playoffs. They've had it in the regular season, but we need to figure out if those guys are going to be on the same page. If they are, I think you just got to continue to bring in wing depth. You need shooters. You need more defenders. And, I'd be a little stumped if I was Utah just because of how well they did last season, and then they just struggled and fell over in the playoffs. Yeah. But they need more talent. They just need to add more talent.
They need more talent, and they need I think they need to just structure their team better. You know, having Rudy Gobert as your safety net back there is really great, right? He's a multiple defensive player of the year, might win it again this season, but their perimeter defense is very bad.
Yep.
So they put a lot of pressure on Rudy Gobert time and time again. He does save them a lot, but they really need to get better defending on the perimeter. And offensively, they love to swing the ball around and shoot a lot of threes. But what's the saying, right? Live by the three, die by the three. Yep. So if they can't knock down outside shots, they're going to really struggle to beat anybody in the playoffs.
Yeah, and Gobert needs to work on his inside game a little bit more. When they do get to those points where they're not making shots, they need to be able to give it to somebody inside and get a bucket when they really need one. Donovan Mitchell can't just do it all himself.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to ask more of Rudy Gobert, right? He's going to make, what, $40 million for the next something 3 years ridiculous. Or something like that?
Yeah.
So it's time that he's done a lot for that organization. He's been, the type of player that they've needed him to be, minus the whole shutting down the league thing a couple of years ago. But can you justify paying the guy that much if he's only going to average 15 points a game and basically just be available for putbacks and lobs?
I mean, it goes to what you said, right? Like, the team needs to take pressure off him on the defensive end of the floor, and maybe that allows him more energy, more time, more effort to put towards offense.
Yep. Yeah, it's hard. I mean, like, Dennis Rodman, for example, if he played today, would somebody give him a $200 million contract? I think there probably would be a team that does that.
Yeah.
And you could probably justify that he was worth that for the Chicago Bulls specifically, and even for the Pistons, I guess. But it's hard when once you see that number of 40 million, 41 million the next season, you're like, whoa.
Yeah, you could end up like the Green Bay Packers, right, where you spend all your money on your quarterback and then you got to trade away your other players because you can't afford them, and then your quarterback doesn't have anybody to throw the ball to.
Yep.
All right, moving on to the second game on Saturday. Minnesota, the world champion Minnesota Timberwolves, after their celebration. Did you see the parade that they had in the streets?
It was pretty funny.
It was crazy. Are visiting the dark horse, as Go Get Bradley Beal says, Memphis Grizzlies. Calvin, now I know you are a huge Ja Morant fan.
Yes, I am.
This Memphis team has been playing incredibly well, with or without him. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
All they do is win games. I think, what are they, second in the East right now?
Second in the West.
Or sorry, in the West, in the standings. Let me hear your thoughts on this game.
This series is perhaps the most interesting and will be the most entertaining series of the first round for me. I think actually both the 2-7 matchups, Boston-Brooklyn out East, Minnesota-Memphis out West, these are going to be must-see TV series. And we've been talking a lot about teams that do it opposite ways here. Memphis and Minnesota, they attack things the same way. The Grizzlies, they've been arguably the best team on paper all season long. They're second in points per game. They're first in rebounds, first in steals, first in blocks, first in fast break points, first in second chance points, first in paint points. They score a staggering 50% of their points in the paint. That's amazing. And they're good whether or not Ja Morant plays. 20-3 without him this year. What they've done, being the second youngest team in the NBA, average age of 24 years old on this team. It's ridiculous to think that they're this good already. And Minnesota, the second half of the season, has been almost just as good. They're the number one scoring team in the NBA. They shoot a ton of threes. They average the most made and most attempted threes per game of any team in the league. So there's a lot of firepower for this game, or for this series. A lot of star power as well. It's going to be very entertaining. I still think Memphis is going to come out on top. But I do have a slight question mark about, is Memphis ready for this stage? I think they're going to answer that pretty quickly, but you never know with a team that's this young.
Yeah, I agree with you. It goes right back to what you're saying, is like, they're only 24 years old. How can they be good this fast? It's only been the regular season. We've seen plenty of teams, just like the Utah Jazz, right?
Yep.
That have had incredible regular seasons only to fall apart in the playoffs, because the playoffs really are just a different type of basketball. Now, if you were to look at this matchup, what team matches up better for the Memphis Grizzlies than the Minnesota Timberwolves that doesn't have a lot of postseason experience, right? They won one play-in game, and they were celebrating like they won the championship. Memphis is favored by 7 in this game. The over-under is 235. I think it's going to be a pretty high-scoring game. But I look at the last game where I'm like, okay, Towns fouled out, right? Minnesota was still able to get that W, right? If you look at Memphis and all the points they score in the paint, they're just going to constantly be going after Karl Anthony Towns. And I wouldn't be surprised if he fouls out in this game or 2 or 3 games in this series, because Ja Morant's going to try and dunk over him every single play.
He will try to dunk over anyone. It doesn't matter who's back there. But I'm glad that you brought this up, because fouls will be a key factor in this series. Memphis, little over 23 free throw attempts per game this season. That's 7th in the NBA. Minnesota allows the most free throw attempts.
Yep.
Minnesota allows the most free throw attempts of any team in the league per game. They play very aggressive defensively. They gamble a lot, and they play physical. So if the Grizzlies are at the line constantly in this series, that's going to be a big advantage for them.
Yeah, and, I mentioned the X factor of the last game for Minnesota was D'Angelo Russell, and he absolutely did everything he needed to do in that game. But we've also seen some inconsistencies with this guy, right? Like, he had a great season in Brooklyn, made his first All-Star game, got traded to Golden State, then they move him to Minnesota. Hasn't quite been the same guy. He played great in the last game, but can he do it over this 7-game series? I'm not really sure. I'm picking Memphis just like you to win this game.
Yeah, I think this series is Memphis's to lose, but it's going to be very entertaining, and expect a lot of points to be scored here.
Yeah. So moving on here, another exciting series. First game of the series, Toronto visiting Philadelphia. We've heard all about the vaccination status of players and how this is going to impact them in this series, because Toronto still has the vaccination mandate. So there will be, I think, only one player at this point that cannot play in Toronto, and that's Matisse Thybulle, that we've heard of so far. Right now, Fred VanVleet's listed as out in this game. Don't know if that's going to happen, but that's huge for them. He is
definitely
probably their first or second best player. Him and Siakam pretty much go hand in hand there. Philadelphia's got James Harden and an MVP candidate in Joel Embiid. Let me hear your thoughts on this game, Cal.
a lot of big storylines in this game, more so I think for Philadelphia than Toronto. Toronto is another team that you probably didn't expect to be here. Maybe you thought they'd be a play-in tournament team, but they really had a great second half there. Both these teams are very solid defensive teams, and turnovers, I think, is going to be one of the biggest factors to watch in this game. Both these teams are really good at taking care of the ball. In fact, they're second and third, respectively, in turnovers per game in the NBA. So whichever team is able to create more turnovers, Toronto is second in the NBA, or finished the season second in the NBA in steals per game. But again, both these teams take care of the rock, so that's going to be a really, really key factor. James Harden, for me, is the player with the most to prove in these playoffs. Mm-hmm. He ended the season playing really, really badly. Jalen Rose had a great quote on NBA Today, or whatever the show was the other day, where he talked about his numbers are looking more like tour dates than they are actual games. You know, 4 of 11, 4 of 12, 3 of 15. He's on tour right now. He needs to get himself in the game. And he is going to take this team as far as they will go, I think. Embiid has been playing at an NBA MVP level all season long, and I expect that to continue. He's going to be a real problem for Toronto to have to deal with inside. But both these teams are gritty defensive teams. I think that Tyrese Maxey is my X factor in this series, though. If he's able to play like he did all year long, that's going to be advantage Philadelphia, and I expect them to win probably 6 games or so, something like that.
Yeah, a lot of good points there. James Harden needs to take off the fat suit. You know, he just needs to be himself in this game. As you mentioned, we already know what we're going to get out of Joel Embiid. The dude has been an absolute beast, playoffs and regular season. He's done it all. I think we know what we're going to get out of him. I do think that he can will a win in maybe 1 or 2 of these games. But as you mentioned, James Harden's really going to need to step it up. For me, the key factor to this series is going to be protecting home court advantage. You know, we talk about visiting teams or traveling on the road. It gets even harder when you're going to a different country, right? In Canada, I know it's not a very, very long way, but there's different rules, there's different regulations. We talked about the vaccine mandate, stuff like that. Philadelphia really needs to protect home court. If they lose 1 or 2 of these games at home, I think they're going to lose the series.
Well, yeah, they could very well, especially if they're not going to have Matisse Thybulle available when they go on the road, because that will hurt them, definitely.
Philadelphia ended the season 4 out of 5 games, wins. And Toronto's 3 out of 5. So, you know, both teams finished out the season the right way. But, yeah, it's going to be an interesting matchup. We'll see how well Pascal Siakam does. He started out the season really, really slow. And we'll see how James Harden does. He ended the season really, really slow.
Yeah, the defensive game plan for Toronto is going to be really key to watch. How do they handle Joel Embiid? You know, are they going to be double teaming him every single time he touches the ball? If that's the case, James Harden has to capitalize on those moments where he's going to either be able to get himself an open shot or find somebody for a really wide open shot. Because once he forces the defense to commit to him, you've already got 2 guys on Embiid. Mm-hmm. Somebody's going to have to step up and make corner threes.
You think we'll see the box and one in this series?
It's very possible. Toronto doesn't have a lot of size, so how they handle Embiid when he is posting up on the block is going to be one of the biggest factors to determining this series.
Yeah, I agree. And I think both of us are picking Philadelphia to win this series. Gotham says, I got Toronto in this one. Let Embiid do his thing, shut down the rest. I mean, he could even beat you.
That's a good game plan to have, but it's hard when you've got another former MVP on the team who's capable of scoring 30 to 40 points on any given night.
Yep.
Which is, again, why there's so much pressure on James Harden here. He's got to perform.
Yep. Moving on to the final game on Saturday. Probably one of the most exciting. If you live in California, you've been looking forward to this for a while, right? The Warriors are returning to the playoffs. Steph Curry says he's probably going to play. Klay Thompson's back. Draymond Green. What are the Warriors going to do this season? 53-29 on the year. They're coming back strong, Calvin, and they're playing a depleted Denver team who could have the MVP on their roster, but is it enough to beat Golden State? I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, I mean, don't pay too much attention to the regular season series between these two teams. Denver won 3-1 in that regard. But yeah, a fully healthy Golden State Warriors team back in the playoffs is the last thing that any other NBA team wants to see. Klay Thompson just ended the season scoring 41 points. He finally, he admittingly says he's not where he feels like he needs to be defensively. But when it comes to offense, playing with Steph and Draymond, catch and shoot threes, I think he's very much so back into his rhythm. And that's a scary thought to think about if you're the Denver Nuggets. Can Jokic do enough in order to carry this team the same way he's carried them all season long? This is going to be a really, really tough one, I think, for the Denver Nuggets. Yeah. I see them winning. They'll be lucky, I think, if they win 2 games in this series.
Yeah, I agree. I was going to say 4-1. It's going to Golden State. We talk about teams that have a switch, right, where it's like, oh, it's playoff time. Let's flip that switch. I think the Warriors definitely have that switch, and they have a good combination of young guys and older guys that have done it before. They got a Finals MVP on the roster. They got an MVP on the roster. They got multiple rings. They got 3 future, if not 4 future Hall of Famers if you count Iguodala. And the fact that Klay Thompson has had a couple years off gives me positive vibes for him, right? Is the fact that it's tough playing in the finals every single year over and over and over. We saw it build up on LeBron. We saw it build up on a bunch of his teams.
Oh, yeah.
Then we saw it impact the Golden State Warriors. Curry's been out for a while, so he's probably going to come back with fresh legs. I don't know exactly how Draymond Green's feeling, but I think that Denver's going to be lucky to win 1 game in this series.
Oh, wow. I think they get 1 for sure. They'll get 1 game in Denver. Maybe they get 2 games, but I don't see it being much more than that. This is another series where I'm looking at the bench as a key factor as well. I think the Warriors are much deeper. Now that they're fully healthy, they have the luxury of moving Jordan Poole, who played as good as many or most starting guards in the league this year, back down to the bench. Bielitsa has given them really good minutes this year. They've got Andre Iguodala still off that bench. Jonathan Kuminga comes off the bench now for them. So this is a much more complete team, I think, and that's not totally Denver's fault, right? They're missing a lot of guys, which is forcing them to play more of their reserves heavy minutes, and that's going to be advantage Golden State.
Yeah, they're kind of in opposite situations here, right? Where Denver has so many guys out that their bench players are playing as starters. Golden State had people that were out, so their bench players were playing as starters, and they were playing as good as starters, and now they're moved to the bench to play against possibly second, third string guys for Denver. Jordan Poole is going to absolutely light it up in this series. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this Aaron Gordon, Draymond Green matchup.
Well, Aaron Gordon is not going to be guarding Draymond Green. that's the one thing that Denver, I think, actually has to their advantage. Aaron Gordon has been all season long the guy that they've used on the opposing team's best wing player, or in a lot of cases, their best offensive player, right? Mm-hmm. Whether it's a guard or a taller wing. I mean, he can guard anyone in this series from Steph Curry to Draymond Green. He's an incredibly versatile defensive player. The problem is the Warriors just have too many weapons, right? He can't guard everyone.
Yeah, and I'm thinking more of like defensively. Draymond Green can probably shut down Aaron Gordon. Yeah. And then who is Jokic going to pass to?
Exactly. Well, I was also going to say Jokic is a terrible defender away from the basket. He just doesn't have the foot speed to stay with anybody. He's horrible in the pick and roll defense, switching on to smaller players. The Warriors are going to put him in those situations every single time with Clay and Steph, and it's going to be really hard for them to stop Golden State from scoring.
Yeah, I agree. All right, guys, we're closing up this section, and we are opening up Q&A. So if you guys have any questions for us, if you have any thoughts, any subjects, or anything you want us to cover, now is your time. So let us know in the chat. Calvin, while we're waiting for them, I'm going to ask you, Friday, what game are you most excited for?
I'm more excited for that Clippers-Pelicans game. I just think it's I think it'll be the more entertaining game to watch. There's a few more stars. That's no discredit to Atlanta and Cleveland, but I feel those teams, especially Cleveland, is more of an up-and-coming team with a lot of young players that we will be talking about for a long time here. But they're maybe ahead of schedule a little bit.
Yep.
As you could say about New Orleans, but the deals they made at the deadline, I think that game is the more tightly contested matchup and the better one overall.
Yeah, and the Pelicans, they could be pretty good in the future as well. I know CJ McCollum's a little bit younger. He's been playing incredible. And I just want to say, if the Kings had brought in Sabonis and CJ McCollum, I think they would be in this play-in game. I really do, because CJ McCollum
it's hard to argue with that.
Played incredible. As far as Saturday goes, I know we got 4 games here. Which one are you most excited for?
Oh, man. It's probably a tie for me. I really like this Memphis-Minnesota series. I think it's going to be really, really fun to watch. And then the Toronto-Philadelphia series, to me, is one of the more intriguing series in the first round, just because of all the different matchup stuff that we talked about.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. All right, we got some questions in here. I just also want to remind you all, please make sure to like this video. Please share this video with all your friends that love basketball, that love bars. We're here Monday through Friday having a great time, and we bring content for you guys. Hey, Flame Fury 11. Wow, we haven't seen you in a while.
Yeah, man. Welcome.
When are you going to claim your autographed Marvin Bagley basketball?
We kept it here in good shape for you.
It's right here.
It's ready to go whenever you want it.
All you got to do is go to Instagram, go to Royal Rebounds, send us a message with your address. We would love to ship you the ball because you are the winner, and we held it for you this whole time. All right, Techno Peasant has got the first question of Q&A. Do you guys think it was fair that Pat Bev got fined for his post-game IG post?
I don't know. Fair? It's probably not fair, but it makes sense, like when you look at the rules and what the NBA, how they want you to conduct yourself in a post-game scenario. So, $30,000 is a lot of money. Like, I don't think it's fair that he got fined that much, but he also knew that was going to happen. He doesn't give a shit, right?
Yeah. I feel like there's guys in the NBA that, like, you already know what they're doing before they do it, right? Like, guys like Pat Bev, guys like Draymond Green, they're already, like, pushed the envelope so far that, once they do stuff like this, the league's got to be like, come on, man, like, you're setting an example for everybody else. We need to do something. We need to step in here. But I agree with Calvin. 30 grand's a lot of money. At least it's going to charity is a good thing. But he was excited. He defeated his old team that didn't want to pay him. I get it. I totally get it. And great player. I give him all the credit. But as Calvin said, the rules are there for a reason, and you got to kind of stick with them. All right, big question here from Flame Fury 11. Who is your 2022 NBA champs, Calvin?
I keep going back and forth on this. It literally, to me, is a coin toss. I got a rematch of Milwaukee and Phoenix. They're the two best teams for me. I think both of them are very, very capable of winning the whole thing. I don't know. If somebody held a gun to my head, I'd probably pick Milwaukee to repeat.
There you go.
I really think it's a coin toss between those two teams.
I think I'm in the same boat as you, but at the same time, I also am going to say don't sleep on the Warriors.
Oh, yeah,
and don't sleep on the Heat.
Yeah.
I just feel like those teams have both been to the finals. They pretty much have the same cores intact, plus they added more talent. I agree with you. I think it's going to be Phoenix and Milwaukee, but I would not be surprised if either of those other two teams snuck in there.
Yeah, absolutely. And Boston is another team that I don't think, for as good of a second half as they had, I don't think people are talking about them enough. I realize they lost Robert Williams, and that's a huge blow to them just because he was so good inside defensively. But they have great star power. They're still a good defensive team overall, and they're really, really hot right now. So I think they have a very, very small chance, but they have a chance.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, to me, they're in a 7-game series. There aren't any teams out there that I think should beat Phoenix or Milwaukee.
Agreed.
I would love to see a Golden State Phoenix Western Conference Finals, though.
Here we go from Key Kings. If Philly loses to Toronto, are they in panic mode? If so, what should they do this offseason?
Yeah, that's a tough one because I think the full-on panic mode, I'm going to say no, and that's just because James Harden's only played 21 games for them so far. I'd like to see a full season with him and Embiid together. I think Tyrese Maxey is a great third option for them as well. I think they need to probably look to go get more shooting. Losing Seth Curry was a big loss for them. And then their frontline depth as well. You know, they don't have Andre Drummond to back up Embiid anymore. Having a solid backup for Joel Embiid is going to be a necessary thing for him for the rest of his career, just because of his injury past. You know, you love to think that he's finally moved on from that. Maybe it's like a Steph Curry situation where the injury problems are behind him and he's going to be pretty healthy for the rest of his career. But a big guy, a really, really big guy that's got back problems and feet problems, that's a scary thing. So they definitely need to shore up their backup center position, grab some more shooting. But I don't consider it to be full-on panic mode yet, just because I want to see James Harden and Embiid play a full season together.
Yeah. I think that they're going to win that series. I really do. But if they do not win the series, I could see them being in a little bit of panic mode. And the reason I say that is just look at this salary on this team. Like, James Harden's got a player option for next season for $47 million.
Yeah, that's the one thing that I was going to bring up next, but it will definitely handicap you financially if he picks up that option.
Tobias Harris making $37 million next season, Embiid making $33 million, Danny Green's making $10 million, and then, you know, you look down the roster here, obviously Matisse Thybulle is a win for you. He's making $4 million next season, Tyrese Maxey only 2.7 next season. Those are two good young guys. But, you know, if they lose this series, this season is an interesting season for Philadelphia because of all the Ben Simmons drama. A lot of people counted them out really early, saying that, you know, your second best player doesn't even want to play on your team. What are you going to do? I think Joel Embiid basically dragged them to this point. If they lose, I think it's a little bit of a lost season for them, but I definitely think they're going to need to make some changes, whether that's trading Tobias Harris to open up some of this cap space or taking guys like Matisse Thybulle and Tyrese Maxey and trading them to try and get some more talent. I think they absolutely got fleeced in the Brooklyn trade by giving up some draft picks, giving up Seth Curry and Drummond. So it's going to be a tough offseason for them if they do lose this series.
Yeah, it will. But I still think, you know, they run it back again next year. That with all the guys that you just mentioned, that's a good start, particularly given the fact that those first 5 or 6 games after they traded for James Harden, Philadelphia looked like they might be the best team in the Eastern Conference. So I just want to see more data, more reps with this group.
Yeah, and I think it's safe to say that Daryl Morey and James Harden have a pretty good relationship, as Daryl's traded for him twice already. He's been able to re-sign him multiple times. It'll be interesting to see what happens. Does James Harden opt in for this last year at $47 million? Or does he
believe he's opting in?
Or does he opt out and sign another $200 million contract with the team?
Maybe.
It's interesting. James Harden's getting a little bit older. He's getting more miles on his body. Is it worth it for him to risk it all for one season at $47 million? Or does he want long-term guarantees?
Yeah.
And what does that do for Philadelphia? I want to say that it could be tampering. It is tampering, but I want to think that like Daryl Morey and James Harden have already had this conversation. Probably before he even traded for him. Yeah. Probably when Daryl Morey was leaving Houston, was like, "Hey James, I know you're not happy here. I'm gonna come get you somewhere."
Yep.
But I agree with you, Calvin. This all comes down to James Harden for me. Is James Harden James Harden? Because if he is, I'm gonna roll with this same team next season. Give them a little bit more time, a little bit more chemistry. These younger guys are getting better. But if he does not look like James Harden out there in the playoffs, I'm hitting the panic button.
Yeah, I think all of Philadelphia will hit the panic button as well.
Yep. All right. If LA loses against the Pelicans tomorrow, do you think Kawhi re-signs?
Man, if I had the answer to that, I'd have a lot of money. Like, Kawhi is probably one of the hardest people to figure out regardless of the team's status, you know? They could win the NBA title, and as we saw, he'll leave. So anybody's guess is as good as mine on whether or not Kawhi or Paul George re-signs. I mean, I think Paul George, his decision probably hinges on what Kawhi is going to do ultimately. But, yeah, that's a really, really tricky one.
I did not know this, but I think they both have re-signed already. I'm just looking here.
Oh, is that so?
It looks like Paul George has got 2 to 3 more years left. Kawhi Leonard's got 3 more years left and a player option, but they're both making a ton of money. Between the two of them, Calvin, they're making $85 million next season.
Pretty crazy.
It is really crazy. But, yeah, this Clippers team they need to bring in more guys. They need to do something. To get over that hump. But getting Kawhi Leonard back will be a huge boost for them. If he was a free agent, I'd say he's going to stay just because he's from LA and he basically chose this team. And I think that the Clippers have done everything that he's asked for up to this point. He asked for Paul George. They got Paul George. They don't have many draft picks left at this point, so they're in a situation where they need to do whatever they can to keep PG-13 and the Claw.
Oh, yeah, they definitely need to keep those guys.
There's a rumor that Russie, I'm guessing this is Russell Westbrook, might be traded to Pacers for Brogdon and Hield. If it happens, in what ways would he be positive and negative influence on Tyrese Halliburton?
It's a good question. I think that he would be a positive influence on Tyrese just from his, Russ is probably one of the premier competitors in professional sports for me. Just the way he attacks his regiment, his routine, he's been, other than that one, a torn meniscus?
He's been very, very
healthy.
By Beverly.
Yep. So just his preparation, his mental attitude towards the game, I think that will have a great impact on Tyrese. Then there's the other side of things.
On the court side.
On the court. Russ is maybe the most confusing player in NBA history. I mean, if you look at numbers, you say this guy's easily one of the best point guards of all time. But there's the turnover issue. There's the fact that he suddenly forgot how to shoot a basketball. And there's all these rumors about him maybe not being as good of a team player as, you'd like to think. I'm not saying any of that is true, but to me, if I'm a team, Charlotte is the same way for me. If I've got a point guard that is young and I think is going to be an absolute stud, I don't want to bring Russell Westbrook to crowd that backcourt with him because I don't want the ball taken out of my young star point guard's hands.
Yep. Yeah, I agree with you. He is a very confusing player, and I love Russell Westbrook. I think that, like you said, the competitiveness, the drive, the preparation, his ability to maintain his health has been incredible. You know, he got undercut by Pat Bev, tore the meniscus. Before that, he hadn't missed a game in high school, college, or the NBA, and I think that was like maybe his sixth
Pretty
year
insane.
in the NBA up to that point.
Especially for a guy that plays with reckless abandonment and so much explosiveness as him, you know. If only Derrick Rose could have had the same luck that Russell Westbrook has had.
Right. So I'm just hoping that this offseason is a good reflection period for Russell Westbrook where he can look and say, hey, I need to reevaluate what my goals are in the NBA, right? Like I've won MVP, I've done this, I've done that, I've been paid, everybody knows who I am. Is a title really important to me? Because if it is, I think he needs to adjust his game a little bit. He's not going to do that with the Pacers either, right? Like he's not going to win a championship with the Pacers. I think he's going to need to, if he does get traded, I think he's going to need to go to, a good team, or he's going to end up getting bought out and go join a good team. You may not agree with me on this, Calvin, but Atlanta could be a potential for him. And, I know we talk about good young point guards. You don't want to take the ball out of their hands, but just the ability that Trae Young has to shoot the basketball and how many guys on that Hawks team can shoot, I think that could be one location where Russell Westbrook could be successful.
Yeah, I agree with that. I look at a team like Boston, actually. I know people might think it's kind of crazy to put him alongside Tatum and Brown just because the fact that Russell Ball eats up so much of the basketball.
Yep.
But that team needs a point guard. I think, they would probably have to surround them with a little bit more shooting. I'm not sure how Marcus Smart and Russell Westbrook look together. But the two of them, defensively, getting after it, rebounding, those are two really solid guards to have from both of those perspectives.
I'm sure the Lakers would welcome Marcus Smart in that deal.
Yeah. It might just be what Boston needs to officially take them over the top.
Yeah, I like that a lot as well. Gotham says Russ and Hallie both have to have the ball in their hands. They do. Might tell them to score more. Yeah, I mean, I think it's proven just, if I were to compare Russell Westbrook to a player in the NBA, I just keep thinking about De'Aaron Fox, and that's just based on like their speed, their aggressiveness. They need the ball in their hands. They're not the best shooters. We saw Halliburton and Fox together, and I think that was a failed experiment. So ultimately, I think that I agree with you, Calvin. Russell Westbrook could help almost anybody in the NBA off the court, right, as a mentor. But on the court is a totally different story. It really is.
Thank you for the question.
Yeah, last call for questions before we wrap it up, and I'm heading to happy hour, Calvin.
Lucky guy over here.
I'm excited. Tomorrow, what time are we going live tomorrow? 3
whenever you're ready.
Okay.
I'm off tomorrow, so.
Tomorrow's going to be a little different. It's probably going to be between 2 and 3 p.m. our time, so that's about 5 to 6 p.m. Western time or 8 p.m. Eastern time.
Oh, man, Priest, I'm sorry. You missed a lot.
Yeah, it's okay.
But we're glad to have you.
Yeah, Priest, we're on Q&A right now, so if you have any questions other than what did I miss, because we would spend a whole hour going through all that, let us know. But rewatch this episode. It's a good one. We talk about a ton of basketball and a lot of games. And Flame Fury 11 still needs to claim his Marvin Bagley autographed basketball. Calvin, who are your top 10 picks?
Well, I'm not 100% sure how to answer the question. Are you saying just who do I think the top 10 prospects are, or where do you think they'll actually go? I mean, that is a lot harder to answer, right? Because we don't know what the lottery results are going to be. And I think you're probably going to see a bunch of things change from picks 5 to 10, depending on who ends up getting those spots, right? That's the way it always goes.
Yep.
But I think there's a pretty clear-cut top 4 or 5 in this draft. It would be Jabari Smith, Chet Holmgren, Paolo Banchero, Jaden Ivey. Those 4 guys, pretty much no matter who you ask, are at the top of this draft board. So
I think Keegan Murray is going to go in the top 10.
Another guy that will definitely go. Yeah, I mean, AJ Griffin, Ben Matherin.
Yep.
You know, they're all of those names that you've been seeing for the past 2 or 3 months, really. It's pretty safe to assume that those guys are going to be the first 8 to 9 people taken.
In order. Wow. You have a top 4 in
order.
order?
Wow.
You got a top 4 in order?
Again, are you asking me who I think the top pick is or where they'll end up?
I think your top 4.
My top 4.
Yeah.
Man, that's really tough because for me, a lot of it depends on which team they're going to, right? For fit wise. But Jabari Smith, to me, I think has the most upside or the most potential of anybody in this draft, just with his size and his skill set. Chet Holmgren probably would slide in at number 2 for me. Paolo Banchero, I think, is a really, really talented, skilled big man, but he has some issues defensively, so he probably ends up 3rd or 4th for me. I like Jaden Ivey a lot as well. I see a lot of, just a lot of these two-way premier guards in the league. He can really score. He needs to become a better shooter at the pro level, but he's a really, really solid defender as well. I'm a big Keegan Murray fan. I think what he did for Iowa towards the end of the season and that run in the Big Ten tournament is going to really improve his draft status. I'm a big Ben Matherin fan from the Kings' perspective. You know, somebody that's going to be picking in the 7 to 8 range, I think is going to get potentially a steal for that pick if they select him as well.
Yeah, I agree with all those. In Gothen, I love your dirty jokes here, but I am not going to repeat it, but it's a good one. Priest, we're taking the Cavaliers over the Hawks. And Calvin, would the Knicks go after Russ and trade Randall for him?
It's very possible. You know, the Knicks are a hard team to figure out what they're going to do, right? Because they've missed out now on these big time free agents for the past 4 or 5 seasons. Mm-hmm. They had a great year last year, but maybe it was a little bit of a mirage, and they're not actually as good as they seemed to be last season. So they definitely need a point guard. I will for sure say that. So will they target a guy like Russ? Yeah, they might.
What about Kemba Walker for Russell Westbrook?
I don't like that deal if I'm the Lakers, just because Kemba had a absolutely abysmal year shooting from the outside.
That's funny. They basically have the Charlotte starting backcourt and him and Malik Monk if they're able to keep him. But yeah, it's interesting. You know, you like Calvin said, Russell Westbrook is probably one of the most confusing guys in the NBA right now. Like, if you were to tell me or ask me where he fits in or where he goes, I could give you a couple different ideas, but in reality, I have no idea. I really don't. Like, the guy does so many good things, and then there's some other things that happen as well. So it's like, where does he fit? Where does he buy in? Ideally, a team where it's him and a bunch of guys that shoot threes, but then who's going to rebound the ball? He's good for maybe 10, 12 a game, but he's not always going to be in position. Mm-hmm. So then what do you have to find, a stretch 4 or a stretch 5? I don't know. All right, guys, thank you so much. We are closing up the bar here, so make sure you guys pay up your tabs. Thank you so much for joining us. As I mentioned, we will be here tomorrow live a little bit later, so make sure you guys join us. Make sure you hit that notification bell so you get notified every time we put out a new video. But thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to tip your bartender.
I feel like Mike Jordan, give me the rock and I'm scoring. Hey, came from the bottom, that's foreign. I swear that I'm up for the sun in the morning. morning. Oof, hey, I gotta flex. I need a Nike bag, give me the check. I need the money and power, respect, but I promise I'm repping the O to the dead. Hey, oof, I told him out of my way. I don't got nothing to say.